Happy New Year, everyone. It's Max here from Evidence-Based Football Manager. Hope you've all had a good time with your family and friends. Today, we're going to talk about Wonder Kids in Football Manager, especially focusing on the new gen Wonder Kids. I'm sure many of you watching this video will have an experience playing Football Manager where you spot an 18-year-old Brazilian youngster with a 5-star potential and an A+ recommendation by your scout, and you spend tens of millions of dollars trying to bring him into your club, only to be frustrated by his lack of growth a few seasons later. If this kind of story rings a bell for you, then you've come to the right place, because the sole aim of this video is to find a way to accurately identify a future superstar in Football Manager by looking at him at an early age. As the Greek philosopher Aristotle once said, "Give me a child at the age of 7 and I will show you the man." I also say to you now, show me a Football Manager Wonder Kid at the age of 15 and I will show you the player that he will become. Now, there is a lot of information that I want to get through, so I'm going to split this research into 2 separate videos. In today's video, I'll be talking about how players grow in Football Manager and how you can use the star ratings given by your scouts to forecast how much a player will grow in the future. So in order to conduct this research, I started a regular career mode save in Football Manager 22 as unemployed, and I simulated the game into the future by going on a holiday. In the year 2022 in-game, I made a short list of 726 new gens aged 15 and with PA above 100. Now, I used the print shortlist function in Football Manager to export a range of attributes and hidden attributes of these players into an Excel spreadsheet. The attributes that I exported are the ones that I believe to have an influence on the development of a player in Football Manager, including determination, professionalism, ambition, injury proneness, reputation, first team appearances, transfer value, and personality. Once I have these data from the year 2022, I simulated the game into the future, and every 2 years I paused the game and exported the same set of data into Excel. I simulated the game all the way to year 2037 in the game, when all these players reached 30 years of age. So with all this data that I have collected in Excel, I am able to form various types of graphs and tables that can give us a lot of information about how player development works in Football Manager. So let's start by looking at these 2 graphs here. So here it shows you how the current ability rating of players change over time as they age. Each of these bars represent the amount of change in CA for the different age brackets. I have 2 graphs here, so this one on the left is including all 726 players in my sample pool, whereas this graph here is only for the players who reach a CA rating of 160 or above at the age of 28. In other words, players who develop into a world-class level. A CA rating of 160, in my opinion, is when a player can be considered world-class in Football Manager. That's why I've made a separate graph here just for players with a peak CA above 160. So you can see from these 2 graphs that players develop at the fastest rate in Football Manager when they're the youngest, and the rate of growth slows down gradually as they age. So on this side, when players are between 15 to 17, they grow by around 15 CA points on average. When they're between 17 to 19, they grow by around 10 points. From 19 to 21, they grow by around 5 points. From 21 to 23, they grow by another 5 points. Between 23 to 28, players grow by around 4 CA points. But this one is actually a 5-year age bracket between 23 to 28. So you can really tell that not much growth occurs during this age bracket. Between 28 and 30 years of age, there's actually a negative growth in CA as these players enter the final phase of their career. On this side, for players with a peak CA over 160, you can see that the amount of growth is a lot more compared to the previous table here. So here, when the players are between 15 to 17 years of age, there is an average growth of around 26 CA points. Between 17 to 19, the average growth is around 16 points. Between 19 to 21, the growth is around 16 again. Between 21 to 23, it's around 14 points. Between 23 to 28 years, the growth is around 10 points. And from 28 years onwards, the CA rating starts to decline. So I reckon the general pattern is quite clear in these graphs, regardless of how you form the sample pool, for these two graphs. So players in Football Manager grow at the fastest rate during their teenage years, and the rate of growth gradually slows down until they reach around 23 years of age. From 28 onwards, the CA rating of players start to decline. Okay, next, let's talk about the importance of match appearances for players in Football Manager. So I have 6 scatter graphs here, one for each age bracket. So in this first graph here, the x-axis represents the number of match appearances between 15 and 17 years of age, and the y-axis represents the growth in CA over the same 2-year period. The number of appearances here include all competitive matches, including league matches, cup matches, and reserve team matches, but not including friendlies and youth team matches. So in this first graph, players have recorded anywhere between 0 to 93 match appearances, and the growth in CA is anywhere between 0 to the 40s. So you can see that there is no correlation between the number of appearances and the amount of growth. So in this age bracket, between 15 to 17, just because you play more, it doesn't mean that you grow more. In fact, a large portion of these players have had little or no match exposure, and they still manage to show a lot of growth. This graph here is when the players are between 17 and 19 years of age. Again, I'm not seeing any correlation between the number of match appearances and the amount of growth. A good portion of these players still have 0 match appearances, but they still manage to develop as much as some of these players here. This graph is when the players are between 19 to 21, and this graph here is when the players are between 21 and 23. In these two graphs, you can see that there is a slight correlation between the amount of match exposure and player growth. So the players who have developed the most during these age brackets tend to have a healthy number of match appearances, anywhere between 40 to 80 matches over a 2-year period. This graph here is when the players are between 23 to 28, and here the positive correlation is a lot clearer. So between 23 to 28, the more you play, the more you will grow as a player in Football Manager. There are some players towards this end of the graph where they play a lot of matches, but they don't seem to show too much growth. This happens when a player reaches his full potential before the age of 23. So by the time the player reaches 23, there isn't too much growth left in the player. For example, if you have a look at this guy here, so this guy is called Lee Farrell. He is actually a new gen who turns out to be a superstar midfielder for Liverpool in my simulation. So if I load up the save for the year 2030, when Lee Farrell is 23, so here you can see that his CA rating is 177, which is already very close to his full potential, which is 179. So when I load up the save for the year 2035, when he is 28, you can see that Lee Farrell's CA rating has gone up to 179. So his CA rating only went up by 2 points between the age of 23 and 28. So this is not because he was lazy in training or anything like that, but because he had already reached his peak CA at an early age before the age of 23. So this last graph here shows what happens when the players are between 28 to 30 years of age. You can see a lot of these players lose their CA rating over the 2-year period, regardless of how many matches they play. Although a handful of these players still manage to grow a little bit, especially when they're playing between 60 to 100 matches over the 2-year period. Okay, next we're going to have a look at the relationship between a player's CA rating as a youngster and the peak CA at the age of 28. So I have 3 graphs here. The x-axes represent the CA ratings of players at the age of 15, 17, and 19. The y-axes represent the peak CA rating of those players at the age of 28. You can see there is a clear positive correlation between the x and y axes in all 3 of these graphs. which means that players who have a higher CA rating at a young age are more likely to have a higher CA rating when they are older. Also, you can see that the positive correlation becomes stronger and stronger as players age. So here, when the players are 15, there is quite a bit of random variation, with all these outliers here and there. But here, when the players are 17, the variance is a bit less. And here, when the players are 19, the correlation is very strong, meaning that if you're crappy at 19, you're most likely to be crappy at 28. But if you're amazing at 19, you are most likely to be amazing at 28. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule. So have a look at this guy here. So this guy had a CA rating of 117 at the age of 17. But at the age of 28, his CA has dropped down to 89, which means he actually declined as a player quite significantly between the ages of 17 to 28. So what happened to this guy? So this guy's name is Lucas Leckmann, who is a product of the Dortmund Youth Academy. So let's have a look together. So at the age of 17, he was a bright young talent for Dortmund, as you can see. But it was injuries that destroyed his career as a football player. So let me just load the year 2035 when Lackman is 28 years old. And when I go into Lackman's career history, you can see he never really made it in Dortmund, and he ended up leaving on a free transfer to Melbourne City. So if I show you his injury history, you can see that he's had a bucket load of injuries throughout his career. And I'll just open the hidden attributes for Lucas Lackmann, and you can see that his injury proneness is 20 out of 20. So there you go. So no wonder this guy had so many injuries all the time throughout his career, and his CA went from 117 at 17 years old all the way down to 89 by the time he was 28. So unfortunate cases like Lucas Lackmann can happen in Football Manager. But generally speaking, a youngster with a high CA do have a higher chance of growing into a superstar in the future, as you can see from these three tables. Now, having established the fact that CA at a young age is positively correlated to CA at a later age, we can try to find some benchmark CA ratings for youngster players in Football Manager that can be used to predict the player's future CA. So, for example, in this graph here, you can see that for a player in Football Manager to reach a world-class level by 28, they need to have a CA rating of at least 80 by the age of 15. Remember, to me, a world-class player in Football Manager is someone with a CA of 160 or above. And here you can see that a 17-year-old youngster needs to be at least CA 100 in order to become a world-class player in the future. And in this table here, you can see that a 19-year-old youngster needs to be at least CA 120 if he wants to reach a world-class level. Of course, CA ratings are only available in the game if you use the editor. So without the editor, you have to rely on star ratings given by your scouts. So the key is to figure out what kind of star rating corresponds to the benchmark CA ratings of 80, 100, and 120. So I tried becoming the manager of Manchester United in FM22, and I got the Manchester United scouts to scout some youngsters with CA ratings 80, 100, and 120. So it turns out that players with a CA rating of 80 tend to have a 1-star rating. Players with a CA of 100 are given around 1.5 stars, and players with a CA of 120 are given around 2 stars. Do note that the star ratings produced by your scouts are relative to the level of your squad and your league. So these star ratings can be different if you're managing in one of the lower leagues in the game. But as a general rule of thumb, if you're managing in one of the top leagues in Europe, look for wonderkids with 1 or more star rating at the age of 15, 1.5 or more stars at the age of 17, and 2 or more stars at the age of 19. Okay, I think I will stop there for today's video. Remember, today was just part 1, and I will be uploading part 2 of this Wonderkid research later on, where I will be going through more factors that determine a player's growth in Football Manager. Again, with the ultimate aim of being able to identify the best Wonderkids in the game by looking at him at an early age. So that's it for today, guys. Do you agree with what I talked about today? What do you think about Wonder Kids in Football Manager? Comment below to let me know. As always, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.